Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good day, all that good stuff. My name is Jason Weiss. You are watching and listening to the Ask Jason Weiss show. I am your host, Jason Weiss. I am a practicing attorney as well as a legal consultant and a coach. That being said, I need to give my disclaimer like I always do. Nothing discussed today constitutes legal advice. Should you seek or need legal advice, consult an attorney directly and establish an attorney-client relationship with him, her, or that firm. And again, nothing today is legal advice, especially because my guest today is an attorney like myself, and we're going to be talking about divorce done differently. You have choices. And today I am honored to have an elite guest, Anthony Diaz. He is the Peacemaker, the collaborative family law attorney. He's a certified mediator, a coach, an author, an international speaker, and just a heck of an all-around nice guy, except maybe if you're on the other side of a piece of litigation or divorce, then maybe he's not a nice guy. But no. I'm sure he'll still be a nice guy and a true gentleman, and as my grandfather would always say, a mensch. So without further ado, who is just up the street from me in the Orlando area, Anthony Diaz. Anthony, tell us a little bit about yourself and your Peacemaker or divorce done differently style of practice. And he's not the Peacemaker that I think was George Clooney in a movie, even though he's as good looking, if not better, than George Clooney.
Wow, what an intro. I can't do any better than that, Jason. But I appreciate you having me. Looking forward to having a good conversation about the different ways to do divorce. So, I've been practicing law for almost 25 years and almost exclusively in family law for about the last 15 years or so. I started out with a regular family law practice that a lot of attorneys do, and do all sorts of cases, divorce, child support, most of them high conflict. And as I developed my practice, I realized that going to court doesn't always equate to the best outcome. And many times my clients and the other attorneys' clients were not happy with the outcome, even though they all wanted their day in court. So I realized that going to court is not always best, and my practice now has evolved with many out-of-court divorce solutions, and that's what my firm specializes in, and helping folks realize that they have other options other than litigation, other than having a War of the Roses type of divorce. I'm excited about sharing those with you today.
Now, and you've mentioned it, and I don't touch family law. I know how to spell the word family. That's about the extent of my family law experience. No, actually, I worked for a lawyer right out of law school who did family law. I helped him handle 2 divorces for 2 of the paralegals or legal secretaries at the firm. And I turned to him and said, please don't ever ask me to do these again. I don't want to do them. But you mentioned my day in court. And as a litigator, I hear that all the time. Oh, I'm going to get my day in court. I'm going to tell the judge, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. I know in commercial litigation, business litigation, all of that doesn't happen until we get to trial. And it's very hard to let people know that. I want my day in court. I want to tell my story. It's not going to happen for 3 years. And chances are you're not going to get to tell the story the way you want because you're going to be cross-examined the entire time. In the family law setting, do people get their quote-unquote day in court?
Well, statistics and numbers show that only about 5% of cases filed actually wind up in trial before a judge to resolve some or all of the issues. Now, there's a lot of steps along the way. You may see the judge on a number of pretrial matters like temporary support and alimony, or some specific issues that need to be resolved before going to trial. But there are a number of steps along the way, and in some cases it could take a year or more to ultimately get to court. So people want to be heard, and they want to make sure their side of the story is given. What isn't understood is that it doesn't happen for a while. It costs a lot of money to get to that point. And when they say day in court, it may not even be a day. It may be a couple of hours. It may be as long as the judge wants to hear your case. I had my last trial was a long time coming trial, and everybody was ready to go. And we blocked out an hour, and this was when I was doing, higher litigation cases. And after about 3 hours, the judge said, guys, I heard enough. I don't need to hear anymore. And my client's like, yeah, but we have to talk about this and talk about that. And I look over to him and I said, the judge said that's enough. So that's also the risk you run, is everything you want to talk about. The judge may not want to hear that or need to hear that, and you kind of feel like, hey, but wait, I've got some more stuff to say. So there are a lot of landmines that can explode when you decide to take that route to go and see the judge.
Right. And we find that, in litigation and everything else, usually just the attorney's getting on and again, it's not as personal as a divorce. I get it. That's very personal. That's where it is, that's for whatever reasons they are, an affair, they don't love each other anymore, there's a major happening, whatever it is, it's very, very, very personal. But we find usually the attorneys can go ahead and just talk it through. I might not be able to convince my client that Aunt Esther's vase should go to, my spouse, or I need it. So I understand it. It's a different world. And you mentioned War of the Roses. To me, that's like the epitome of what a divorce will look like, fighting over everything. And if I can't have it, you can't have it. And all of this and all of that. Is that how, is that really indicative of the legal system on the family law side? Or I'm going to guess there's some exaggeration, but, is that really what it's like?
Well, it's funny. When I first saw that movie, I wasn't an attorney, and I'm like, oh my God, is that how cases go? And you see it as an exaggeration, and I talk about it all the time when I go and speak. And as I got involved with family law, yeah, it is somewhat of an exaggeration, but many of it is true. And I've seen many cases where people are fighting over the most ridiculous things. Haven't had a case where people were hanging on the chandelier and fell to the ground, but there was a lot of emotional abuse and domestic abuse, and people throwing stuff at each other and planning to hurt the other individual, because it gets so emotional. And once you decide to go down the track of litigation, it really opens up a can of worms, and emotions aren't contained. There's no place for them. The attorneys aren't skilled in handling emotions, so it really becomes a train wreck. And it has a lot of the components of the War of the Roses, unfortunately.
Now you said attorneys aren't trained handling the emotions, and I mean, every once in a while you'll get an attorney that in college minored in psychology or anything like that. Do you often, and without going into any confidences, of course, would you like recommend to a client, hey, look, you might want to go see a therapist, or you might want to go get a coach, or you might want to go get, help? Or is that something that, as a professional, enough to say, look, you need help? Is that something
Sure.
that's common?
So I would recommend anyone who's going through a divorce, no matter what level of conflict there is to be working with somebody to deal with the emotions that are bound to come up at whatever type of divorce you have. Now, I've worked with a lot of clients, and I've developed over the years a compassionate and empathetic side, because it's helpful to be able to work with folks and um, meeting them wherever they are. And at the same time, I recommend certain types of counselors, because I can I can see that certain people need certain types of support. If there's domestic violence, you're going to probably want someone who specializes in that. If you have a lot of issues with the children and them being used as pawns, you're going to need a certain type of counselor. So being, as an attorney, being able to identify those areas that need specific support and being able to refer my clients there, one, it's helpful for them to be able to get the support they need. And if they're able to get that type of support, that's going to help them and myself in be able to move this case along. Because I've had a number of cases where folks weren't getting the support they need, and it was kind of above my expertise, and it really affected the case being resolved easily, because there was always these places where everyone had to stop because the emotions got to a certain point and nobody was getting support. So I always recommend my clients certain types of support. And when I work with other attorneys, if I recognize a need for their clients, I don't hesitate to say, hey, it looks like John's having a lot of difficulty in this area. Would you recommend that they see somebody, because it would help you, it would help our case? So being able to identify when folks need certain types of support is really helpful in resolving the case.
And it's an interesting field. I mean, so like the closest I get is to divorce would be like a business divorce. Two partners or three partners or a corporation, they're breaking up, and usually within a year of the papers, or the following closing out of the calendar year, they can each go their own way. They've taken their dividends, they've taken their indemnity, they've taken this, they've taken that. You mentioned like divorce with kids, like you and the person that you're co-parenting with, or the father or the mother or whatever it is, like you got 18, 21 years where you guys have to like try to coexist, or raise a child together, or figure out who's going to make healthcare decisions. Like there are so many things that people come to the table with. And I guess part of your hardest job, I would think, and I think this is going to maybe segue into what I want to talk about. They have to coexist to some extent. I would think. I mean, what do you tell your clients? Like, I mean, you have you can pick any type of client you want. The man who all of a sudden got, my wife is leaving me because she's stole all my money and taken the kids and run off, or the woman who the husband just dumped her and is having an affair. Like, how do you, like, I guess the first thing you got to do is calm them and tell them, hey, look, I've been here before. This is major, but it's not unique to me. I deal with this all of the time. Like, how do you, I guess you're the first person they call. How do you take on that train wreck that, oh my God, I'm getting divorced, what do I do? Or, oh my
Sure,
God,
sure.
I gotta get divorced.
So the most important thing is really to listen to see where they are in the process, and especially mentally and emotionally. If they're the one on the receiving side and their spouse, is leaving them, they're going to have a certain amount of emotions. Rejection, I didn't see this coming. Yeah, we had a hard time, but we think we work it out. And then you have the other spouse that, even though they are pursuing the divorce, they have their own, emotions, guilt. Oh, we had a long marriage. It's not working out. I don't want the other person to be hurt. Or we have children. How are we going to handle that? Is this going to be, a train wreck? So understanding where they're coming from is important, and then really walking them through the process, like the conversation that you and I are having, just making it a conversation. Here's what's going to happen next, because the unknown really causes all of us anxiety when we don't know what's going to happen next, and it's never happened to us before. We automatically go to the worst case scenario. We all do it, even though it will never happen, but that's where we go. So I kind of spell out, here's what's going to happen, here's your options. And when it comes to the children, what I really stress, and I say this over and over and over again, that we are looking at what's in the best interest of the children. Okay, it's not your version of the best interest, or it's not your spouse's version. It's what the court would look at as in the best interest of the child. And it's not going to be totally your way. It's not going to be totally the other spouse's way. But what can we come up with? What type of arrangement can we develop together that will make sure that this is not a stressful process for the children? How can we help them cope? And what decisions can we make now, knowing that both you and your spouse are going to co-parent, will have to coexist together as a result of having children, that you can be a model for your children, that even though mommy and daddy are divorced, they don't hate each other. They're not divorcing because of anything that we did, and to help them develop healthy relationships in the future. But what can we do as parents for the next 10, 12, 15 years together to make sure that this turns out well for them? And the bottom line is, that's still the family unit. It doesn't matter whether they're still living in the same home. This is a family unit to a certain extent when it has to do with the children. And it doesn't matter what each of you do in the future with spouses or significant relationships. What can we do now to make sure the next 10 or 12 years are the best for our children?
Right. So, and it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not, but you could be in representing a client with a family matter or a divorce matter for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, because it could be, until the child is of 18 or 21. It could be when the person gets remarried, there's different, different terms. So, I mean, you could live on a case for what, 10 years, 20 years, if not longer.
Sure. And this is where um, being creative and resolving these cases without going to court, because the judge isn't going to have all this time to develop a plan that's going to work for both of the spouses. He doesn't know both the spouses. He doesn't know the children, but you've asked him to come up with a plan, and he or she will. But 99% of the time, it's not going to identify the specific needs of the parents, of the children. So knowing what these other choices, these out of court choices are, really come into play when you're trying to develop a co-parenting plan, a parenting plan with your children, because the parents know their situation the best, and they know their children. But you have to stay out of court and be able to work together with all your different other choices, to be able to make an arrangement that works for everybody.
And that's perfect, because that's going to segue us into my next set of questions, which is going to talk about the divorce done differently and things along those lines. So we're almost at that 20-minute mark, so we couldn't have planned this better. So what we're going to do, if it's cool with you, Anthony, is we're going to jump into a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back, and I want to talk about two things. I'll give you the heads up, since we didn't plan this beforehand. Number one is going to be I want to talk about doing things out of court, being prepared, and doing all that. And I also want to talk to you about, do you think moving to more Zoom type hearings, if that's negatively, positively, or hasn't impacted the whole family court and arrangements that have been done. So we're going to go into a quick break. We're going to come back with Anthony Diaz at anthony@anthonydiazlaw.com. And we'll get back into that. For those of you that didn't see it on the screen, that's why I read it. And we'll talk about divorce done differently and choices you have, and Zoom on family law as a whole. So we're going to go break to our sponsors commercial, and Anthony will be right back with me, and we're going to talk about more great stuff.
You're getting divorced, and you have to come up with a plan for your likely biggest asset, your home. What next? What is seemingly easy is anything but. There are a huge number of considerations to address to determine the best course of action. But where can you turn? A good place to start is the Divorce Housing Pro. The Divorce Housing Pro helps divorcing homeowners determine and execute a plan to resolve the sometimes complicated disposition of the marital home or homes. As the Divorce Housing Pro, I can advise you on the available options and work with you to determine the optimal one. I can provide focused mediation services to work with the divorcing couple to find the best option that serves both spouses in an equitable manner. Finally, I can provide lending support to assist you in applying for the best loan option and securing a loan to begin your Act 2. It's your most important asset. Go with a pro. Divorce Housing Pro. Loan consultation, mediation, and advice. Mediation services provided by the Divorce Housing Pro through Keystone Mediation. Lending services provided through strategic partners. Divorce Housing Pro is not a lender, does not accept applications, underwrite, or process loans, nor do we make credit decisions.
So we are back at the Ask Jason Weiss show. I am your host, Jason Weiss. I am honored today to have the Peacemaker, Anthony Diaz, with me. And let me just put this quick disclaimer out there. Although we are attorneys and although we are talking about the law, nothing discussed today constitutes legal advice. You haven't hired either one of us at this point in time. There is no attorney-client privilege. You should seek legal advice if you need it, and you can consult an attorney directly. And if you are dealing with a family law matter in the state of Florida, then go ahead and reach out to Anthony Diaz. Anthony, are you also licensed anywhere other than Florida?
I am not, just in the state of Florida, and it's a pretty big state, though.
Yep. So you could get him. He's in the Orlando area, but that doesn't mean he can't handle the entire state, correct?
Absolutely. And
All right.
especially with Zoom these days, it makes it a lot easier.
So let's get into that. Zoom, as you just said, it makes court and attending things a lot easier. I had a case this morning in Texas. I've got one later on in the afternoon that I'm listening in Ohio. I can do all that. It's phenomenal for me because I can attend everywhere. It's good for my clients because they don't have to pay for me to drive and park and put on a suit and do all this and do all of that. I personally, in my field, haven't noticed a decline in the effectiveness. I actually think it's very smooth. In the family law arena, what do you think? Is Zoom here to stay? Are you going to be in person? Like, what do you think? What's your guess?
Sure. So Zoom, was an amazing addition to court, especially a family law or cases during COVID. That was the only way for cases to move. And so, I mean, it was a great addition, and it helped to make sure cases didn't backlog, because if we didn't have Zoom, we would still have a backlog that would probably go on for years and years. So it was a great addition. It was a little clunky at first, everybody getting used to it. But it was it was definitely a plus. I think now that we're, going out of COVID and back in, but I mean, we're slowly moving past where we were, and it certainly has a lot of places where it works, like short matter hearings, or like 5-minute or 15-minute hearings. Instead of driving to court and driving back, it's more efficient for you. It's more efficient for your client because it keeps the fees down, because you're not having to charge to go back and forth. If they have to appear, it's a lot easier for them to appear virtually, instead of them having to go through security and everything like that. So in many ways, it's been helpful. It's a little clunky during more sophisticated type hearings, where you have evidence, or you have experts or witnesses, and do they know how to use Zoom? So it has its place. I think it's going to be very specific in the future. It's great for mediation, because a lot of people are uncomfortable to be in the same room together with their spouse for whatever reason. And when you're on Zoom, you're you can see each other, but you're not in the same room, and you can go into breakout rooms. So it has its pluses, and I think going forward, the court will use Zoom for very specific purposes, but it's being found out that it doesn't serve every part of going to court, which is a good reason not to go to court.
I get it. So let's talk about that a little bit. Not going to court. So divorce done differently. Tell us a little bit about some of your strategies to do it differently, as opposed to going to court constantly, War of the Roses type battle. Like I'm guessing you take a unique and a creative approach without giving away trade secrets. Explain how you do it differently than the 3 other attorneys that share office space with you.
Sure. So and it's interesting, in Florida, family law attorneys are required to discuss all the different options of divorce and not just litigation. So I'm really happy about that, because all of the family law attorneys are obliged to mention that, whether that's a specialty area or they're for them or not. So I'm happy about that. So when I meet with potential clients, it's interesting that I ask them, what type of outcome are they looking for? Do you want it to be high conflict? Do you want to be a lot of high emotion? And most people don't. They want an easy divorce. They want an amicable divorce. And when I mention that they can do it without going to court, they're surprised. They don't understand that there are other options. So a lot of people need to know that there are many ways to get divorced. So I want to focus on 3 ways that are the most popular, or the ones that I can help them the easiest. One way is as a mediator. I'm a certified mediator. So if spouses want to not use attorneys and don't want to go to court, they can hire a mediator. And what'll happen is the mediator will go over all the potential issues that need to be discussed, with the goal is to have an agreement. And at the end of the process, if there's an agreement on all the issues, I as a mediator can create all the documents for them, because it's not just a marital settlement agreement. There's a petition, and there's all sorts of documents the court requires to be filed. So I can prepare all of those, get all of their signatures, and be able to give them a packet of documents that they can now go to court and have an uncontested final hearing with the judge, and they just have to either e-file, which I can help them do, or I can give them instructions on how to go to the clerk, filing documents. So all that they have to do is appear at a final hearing. So pros and cons of mediation are, the pros are it costs much less than hiring one attorney, much less than hiring 2 attorneys. You're agreeing to not go to court, so the process takes less time. You meet with a mediator over 1 or 2 or 3 sessions. It takes a week or 2 to prepare the documents. You could be divorced within 60 days, I would say, because it takes a little while to get a hearing. But from mediation to divorce, it could be 60 days. So it's an inexpensive, it's an efficient way to go to court. But you need to have a relationship with your spouse where you can sit in the same room and you can have a discussion, you can have a negotiation. As a mediator, I can't advise them on the law. I can't advocate for either one of them. So it really is a very specific situation for specific spouses. I do it many times, and for folks that can work together, it really is a good way to stay out of court other than a final hearing and not use attorneys.
So that sounds like it's a really non-confrontational look. Our marriage just fell apart. She wants this, I want this. We're basically in the same things. We just want to make sure it's papered up. She keeps the house, she keeps that. So it's basically like, hey, we just need somebody to paper it up. And I get that on the business side all the time. Hey, I'm going into business with my brother, and we want to have an operating agreement put into place where he runs the day-to-day, I put in all the money, we share the profits 50-50. Can you paper it up? And I paper it up, and then they have to look at it. The difference for me is I'll always tell them, look, I did everything you wanted, but I can't give you legal advice. And usually the response is, no problem, my corporate lawyer will look at it from my side. And my brother, okay, good, I'm off the hook.
Yep. Yeah. And that happens many times in mediation. And although as a mediator, I can't give them advice, a benefit of using a mediator is our skills as a facilitator, and to help them to go over options. Like they may agree on something like this, the sale of the house, but they don't know what to do with the proceeds, and they don't know the different options. Is it 50-50? Can we do this? Can we do that? So using a mediator, although it's without advice, is to be able to help them understand that they have different options within each of the areas that they need to have an agreement. And even if they don't have a full agreement coming into to see me, again, I can help them to look at different ways to come to a resolution with the sale of the house, or with someone's retirement accounts that they may not be aware of. So coming to the table with having everything agreed upon is great if it happens. It's not required, and I've helped folks settle many mediations without having everything resolved. But the key is they were open to different options, and they were open to negotiation and not getting dug into a particular position. So mediation is good for those folks.
And what about if it's not a mediated one and it's just, hey, Attorney Diaz, my husband just dropped this lawsuit on me. I don't have money, and I want to get it done, and I don't want to go to court, and I'm afraid of court, and I can't take off time, and blah 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 blah. How do you, after you let the dust settle and say, okay, done differently? How do you do it differently? What's your approach?
Yeah, and that happens many times. I have a spouse come in, and they may or may not have been served with papers, or maybe they're the ones pursuing it. One of the options they have is hiring me, and I as a capacity of a settlement attorney. So I help them come up with a solution, an outcome, and a proposed marital settlement agreement, and I actually provide that to the other spouse and indicate that their spouse would like to resolve this without going to court, and it's not necessary for you to hire an attorney, though I would advise you to consult with an attorney with this agreement, and let's see if we can resolve this with only using one attorney. Now, using me as an attorney, I can only represent one spouse. I can't represent both. However, certain cases don't require two attorneys. If you have the other spouse is not really interested in hiring an attorney, that they're pretty easy to negotiate with, and really it's just a matter of, if this isn't a good resolution for you, what do you propose, as a counter proposal, and we can go back and forth and ultimately be able to come to a resolution with me being the attorney for one of the spouses. We wind up with an uncontested divorce, and many times we can submit all the documents to court, and when the court sees that there is at least one attorney on the case, they don't require a final hearing. So again, you're staying out of court for the most part. You're only incurring fees for one attorney. That other spouse will probably go and have a consultation with an attorney, to make sure that this isn't a crazy agreement that they're signing off on. But it also is an efficient process. It can be done usually in a few months, and can save a lot of time and fees. And especially if there are children involved, it really helps keeping both parents from being adversarial with each other, and that's helpful for the children. So it's not quite a mediation, it's kind of one step up, because now we're involving an attorney, but it's only one attorney, and the goal is to have a settlement, as quickly as possible.
So you've mentioned timing a couple of times. So the quickest divorce you've ever seen or assisted with or been involved with?
Probably, I would say around 45 days. In Florida, there's a 20-day cooling off period. So it's going to be a minimum of 20 days, and then there's time for documents. So it usually can't get done in less than 30 days because of that requirement, but 45 days was pretty good. But you have the spouses that work together. They wanted to get this done. That's important, because there's only so much I can do in moving things along, but they were on the same page. They were responsive. And if I have responsive clients or a client, it really, and this, Jason, as an attorney, we can only do so much, but when we have folks that are responsible and responsive, it makes our job a lot easier, and that helped us to get it resolved in 45 days.
And what about the longest divorce matter you've ever been involved in?
Well, of course, it was a litigated matter, and it went to trial. We couldn't get more than one day at a time. So we actually needed 5 days. So it was spread out over about 2 years. And I can tell you, it was one of the worst experiences of my life, because every time you have to go to trial, you have to review everything, and it's been 6 months, and it's not really a great experience. But this is, once you step into the arena called court, you are under their rules, and if they want to stretch it out over 2 years, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I have friends that, you know, their divorce was finished, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and they're back in front of the judge 2-3 times a year. You know, this one said this about me, that one said that, co-parenting plan, got fired, got a raise, got divorced. They're constantly. And I'm saying to myself, boy, the amount of money that they're spending, you know, I could have worked out on my own, but it just reaffirmed that I want nothing to do with family law. Zero.
Right.
I'm a mediator. I won't even mediate a family court matter. I want nothing to do with it. So favorite movie having to do with divorce. What would you say?
I would probably still say War of the Roses. I mean, it's a classic movie, got great actors. It's kind of a cheesy story, but there's parts in that I've seen in different cases. You know, I haven't seen one case, or I haven't had one case that had all of those components. But you know, if you look over 10 or 20 of my cases, each of them had a scene from that movie. So anyone who's a family law attorney that has done a court work, they'll definitely identify with that.
And it's funny, a handful of weeks ago, I had a litigator on with me, and we were talking about our most realistic or favorite law movie. And believe it or not, you want to take a guess on what we both agreed upon without even a doubt?
I would say My Cousin Vinny.
Bingo, 100%.
I just saw it last week for the 8th time.
I have it. So I have, you know, my DVR, and I have a handful of recorded movies, and that Independence Day, National Treasure. I just watched Runaway Jury last night for the 7th or 8th time in the past month. Great stuff. So look, you want to get divorced differently. You want to find out your options. You want to hear what, you know, other ways of doing it. You know, please reach out to Anthony. Anthony at anthonydiazlaw.com. You can also get him on his website at anthonydiazlaw.com. Or I see it's also anthonyjdiaz.com. Florida divorce attorney, family matters in general, and also mediation as well. So look him up. Great guy. Roots for the wrong New York baseball team, but it's all good. We've already talked about that. And again, I'm just going to throw in my quick plug right here. If you want some coffee, because I'm back to roasting and grinding and doing it, free sample of coffee. If you just email me at jason@jswlawyer.com, and all I need you to do is put ground or whole bean and give me a mailing address, and be on the lookout for a wonderfully smelling package a couple of days later. I'm back. I just got a shipment in of green beans today, so I'm going to be out roasting in between conference calls. Anthony, I want to thank you for giving us time today, giving me personally an education that divorce can be done differently. It's not all about War of the Roses. I can't wait to connect with you in person next time I'm up in the Orlando area. And again, thank you so much. And Anthony, best phone number for the office for people that are listening but not watching.
Sure, it's area code 407-212-7807, and we will get back to you within the same day.
So look, thinking about divorce, got served with papers, had a divorce that didn't go the way you want, need to fix something, give Anthony a call. Don't call me, because I have no clue what I'm doing. I'll tell you to call Anthony.
Thanks, Jason.
No problem. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, CC and the Going Solo Media Network. Thank you for all you do. We'll be back in, depending on what Cece tells me, either 1 week or 2 weeks. And have a wonderful summer. And again, nothing today was legal advice. Consult an attorney. Thanks. Take care, Anthony. Thank you again.